So now we'll talk about the metabolic acidosis. So what are the causes of metabolic acidosis? We divide into three important causes. If there is an accumulation of acid anions in extracellular fluid, or if there is an under excretion of net acid by the kidney, like in patients with advanced CKD. Okay, or if there is a loss of bicarbonate, right, in GIT or in kidneys also, right. So these three conditions can result in metabolic acidosis broadly. If there is an accumulation, be it endogenous acids or exogenous acids, or if there is under excretion, or if there is loss of bicarbonate, right. So now we'll discuss the metabolic acidosis under two categories. One is high anion gap metabolic acidosis and normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. So we'll try to remember this with a mnemonic. High anion gap metabolic acidosis, the mnemonic is mud piles. Right. So high anion gap metabolic acidosis usually occurs when there is accumulation of acid ions in extracellular fluid, like if I say diabetic ketoacidosis. So in diabetic ketoacidosis, there is accumulation of acetoacetate and beta hydroxybutyrate, right? For that matter, even alcoholic ketoacidosis, starvation ketoacidosis, right? So I'll write here alcoholic ketoacidosis and starvation ketoacidosis also. Okay. Another condition in which there is accumulation of acid anions in extracellular fluid is lactic acidosis. There is accumulation of lactate. Okay. Or if there is an under excretion of net acid by the kidney, like in uremia, in patients with advanced CKD, so uremic acidosis occurs because of under excretion of net acid by the kidney. And also I have told you, if there is an accumulation of exogenous acids, like if there is salicylate toxicity, or if there is toxic alcohol ingestion which causes organic acid production, right? Toxins which causes organic acid production can also result in high anion gap metabolic acidosis, like methanol. Methanol results in formation of formic acid, which accumulates in extracellular fluid and causes high anion gap metabolic acidosis. Similarly, ethanol or ethylene glycol, salicylates, even isoniazid and iron tablets are also said to cause this high anion gap metabolic acidosis. P for paraldehyde or pyroglutamic acid. So these conditions can result in high anion gap metabolic acidosis. Simple to remember: diabetic ketoacidosis, lactic acidosis, uremic acidosis, and toxic ingestions, right? You can remember it with the cult mnemonic also, right? So very easy to remember. And if I talk about the normal anion gap metabolic acidosis, again we can remember it with a mnemonic fused car. So basically there is loss of bicarbonate from the GIT, like fistula pancreatic. Okay, sorry. There is a pancreatic fistula, or if there is a small intestine fistula, right, small intestine fistula, or if there is ureterosigmoidostomy. All of these conditions result in loss of bicarbonate from GIT. Okay, or I have told you in diarrhea also there is loss of bicarbonate, right? Similarly, if there is extra alimentation, right, which is rich in chloride, or if there is carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, like patient is taking, patient is taking acetazolamide, carbonic anhydrase inhibitors in Addison's disease and renal tubular acidosis. So two important causes are diarrhea and renal tubular acidosis, which you have to remember. Fine. So now we'll talk about each one of them. I hope it is clear, this much is clear. Okay, now we'll talk about each one of them. So first of all, we'll talk about lactic acidosis. So lactic acidosis occurs because of accumulation of lactate. Okay, now it is also of two types, lactic acidosis type A and type B. Type A is poor tissue oxygenation, right? Tissue hypoxia. Conditions which result in tissue hypoxia. Now this can be as a result of shock. Okay, this can be as a result of shock or cardiac failure, or if somebody is having severe anemia, or if there is mitochondrial enzyme defects, or inhibitors like carbon monoxide, cyanide. So all of these conditions can result in type A lactic acidosis, which causes tissue hypoxemia. And type B is an association with aerobic conditions, like in which there is no tissue hypoxia. All other conditions which is not associated with tissue hypoxia but causes lactic acidosis are included in the type B type, right? Like if we have patients who are having malignancies. Okay, similarly, if somebody is having seizures, severe infections like cholera, malaria. I hope you can well understand that why does lactic acidosis occur in this condition. Like in all of these, like in malignancy, there is high cell turnover, there is high metabolism rate, right? So there is relative deficiency of oxygen, so anaerobic glycolysis occurs. Because of that, there is accumulation of lactic acidosis. In seizures, there is sudden increase in muscle activity, so again anaerobic glycolysis occurs, and that results in formation of lactic acidosis. In severe infections, again there is high metabolic rate in the body, the bacteria, there is high proliferation of bacteria in the body, right? There is high inflammatory response. So all of these conditions they cause relative tissue hypoxia, and there is anaerobic glycolysis. So again they can result in lactic acidosis. Similarly, if somebody is having thiamine deficiency, you know thiamine is an important cofactor in TCA cycle when we talk about alpha ketoglutarate, right, or PDH complex. So thiamine deficiency can result in some drugs can also result in, like biguanides, metformin classically, even nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, which are antiretroviral drugs, they can also result in this, right? Similarly, if somebody is have taken toxic alcohol ingestion, so they can result in lactic acidosis also, because of vomiting and all that, they get dehydrated. So again these can ensue, but that will cause particularly type A, but as such they can also result in type B lactic acidosis, right? Apart from that, a very important cause is supposedly if there is a elderly patient who is having decompensated heart failure or severe atherosclerotic vascular disease, and you put him on vasopressors because of hypotension or any reason, you put him on vasopressor. So if there is a sudden rise of lactic acidosis, so you should suspect unrecognized bowel ischemia or infarction, right? Because atherosclerosis and cardiac decomposition is a risk factor for bowel ischemia infarction, and you are giving vasopressor also, so again that will exacerbate the injury, right? So bowel ischemia or infarction is an important cause. Even diabetes mellitus can also result in this. Ethanol and other ethylene glycol, methanol, they can also result in this. So this is lactic acidosis. So in lactic acidosis, usually the delta ratio is 1.6. Okay. If I talk about the treatment of lactic acidosis, so first thing is avoid vasopressors because they will further increase the lactic acid production. Avoid vasopressors, right? Another thing is, if you can treat the underlying cause, well and good. Otherwise, the important thing is, when will you give bicarbonate? So let me tell you, in patients with high anion gap metabolic acidosis, you have to be very cautious about giving bicarbonate, particularly if the high anion gap metabolic acidosis is because of metabolizable anions like lactate, acetoacetate and beta hydroxybutyrate. These are metabolizable anions. So they will convert into bicarbonate once the acidosis resolves, right? So if you give bicarbonate from outside, so that will result in rebound alkalosis, because they are also getting converted into bicarbonate, you are supplying it from outside also, so that will result in rebound alkalosis. So you have to be very cautious in patients who are having high anion gap metabolic acidosis due to metabolizable acid anions, right? But in patients of uremic acidosis, you don't have metabolizable anions, you have non-metabolizable acid anions. Similarly, in patients with normal anion gap metabolic acidosis, again there are non-metabolizable acid anions. So in such conditions, the bicarbonate they has to be given in an amount sufficient to bring the bicarbonate to the normal value. But here you don't want a normal value, right? Here, particularly in lactic acidosis, bicarbonate should only be given if pH is less than 7. If there is severe acidemia, to improve the cardiac function, you are giving the bicarbonate. If there is severe acidemia, then only you should give the bicarbonate, right? Because I have told you bicarbonate, there are two side effects. One is it will cause rebound alkalosis once the lactic acidosis resolves, because it will get converted to bicarbonate. And other, it can also result in volume overload, because sodium will cause water retention along with it, so it can result in volume overload. So that's why it's very important to treat this acidosis only if pH is less than 7. And the target, you don't have to increase the pH beyond, you don't have to increase it beyond 7.2. And similarly, bicarbonate should not be raised more than 12 millimoles per liter, right? So this is the target. Okay, another condition I'll discuss is diabetic ketoacidosis. So again, there is increased fatty acid metabolism and there is increased production of metabolizable acid anions, namely acetoacetate and beta hydroxybutyrate, right? So that results in this high anion gap metabolic acidosis. And usually I'll just write, there is increased fatty acid metabolism and accumulation of acetoacetate and beta hydroxybutyrate. They are metabolizable anion. Okay, so again this ratio, this delta ratio usually is close to 1. Okay, and when will you treat? Usually this diabetic acidosis occurs in patients with type 1 diabetes mellitus. Okay, so bicarbonate therapy is again given when pH is less than 7.1. particularly in patients who are elderly or with severe heart disease, you have to give bicarbonate in order to improve the cardiovascular function. Otherwise, you can be bit conservative about giving bicarbonate again in diabetic ketoacidosis, because these acid anions will convert into bicarbonate once the ketosis resolves, right? So this is about diabetic ketoacidosis. Apart from that, insulin has to be given, right? And if there is potassium deficiency, that has to be supplemented. So this is about lactic acidosis and diabetic ketoacidosis. So similarly is the alcoholic ketoacidosis. If the patient who is having chronic alcohol and he stops drinking abruptly, right, and the nutrition is poor, so he can again go into alcoholic ketoacidosis. So usually in alcoholic ketoacidosis there is mixed acid base disorders. Say if a patient is having underlying liver disease, so because of underlying liver disease he will be having respiratory alkalosis, and if he develops acidosis, alcoholic ketoacidosis, so a mixed acid base disorders. And further, if he starts vomiting also, so metabolic alkalosis also occurs. So triple acid base disorders can occur in such conditions. So usually in alcoholic ketoacidosis there is mixed acid base disorders, right? So you have to be very cautious in that. So this is about lactic acidosis and diabetic ketoacidosis. We will talk about the rest of the conditions which are associated with high anion gap metabolic acidosis. So another condition in which there is high anion gap metabolic acidosis is if there is under excretion of net acid by the kidney. So in patients with advanced CKD. Why I am saying advanced CKD? Because in moderate CKD in stage 3 and 4, you come across non-anion gap metabolic acidosis, so normal anion gap metabolic acidosis, right? But in advanced CKD in uremic state, you have this high anion gap metabolic acidosis, because there is impaired formation and excretion of ammonium ions by the kidney, right? Ammonium ion usually acts as a urinary buffer, so they helps to excrete the acid anions out of kidney. So because there is impaired formation and excretion of NH4 positive ions in advanced CKD, so there is retention of acid ions, right? Now let me tell you that these retention of acid anions, they are basically non-metabolizable anions. So bicarbonate has to be given in an adequate amount, right? Now let me tell you what are its consequences. If a patient of if patient has chronic acidosis, right? So the alkaline salts from bone, they buffer these acid, right? Particularly calcium carbonate. So if you don't treat this acidosis, so there is loss of this calcium carbonate from bones, ultimately resulting in loss of bone mass, right? So what are the consequences? There is loss of bone mass due to loss of calcium carbonate, because this calcium carbonate, they acts as a buffer to, basically they buffer the acid load retained in advanced CKD. So there is loss of bone mass. Apart from that, chronic acidosis also increases the urinary calcium excretion, right? So which is responsible for muscle wasting. So there is muscle catabolism if you don't treat this acidosis. And apart from that, there is, particularly in early stages, there is accelerated progression of CKD. Accelerated progression of CKD. So because of this, you need to treat the acidosis aggressively. Now how will you treat? You will give the bicarbonate in an amount sufficient to bring it to the normal value of 24 millimoles per liter, and also try to bring the pH in the normal range, right? So bicarbonate has to be supplemented in an adequate amount to bring it to the normal value, right? You need not to be conservative as in the case of lactic acidosis and alcoholic ketoacidosis. So this is about advanced CKD. Now we'll talk about some toxic alcohol ingestions. First of all, we'll talk about salicylates. So usually salicylates toxicity causes respiratory alkalosis, right? But it can result, usually it results in respiratory alkalosis, but there can be a combination of respiratory alkalosis plus high anion gap metabolic acidosis. Okay, now how will you treat it? So apart from gastric lavage and activated charcoal, what else you have to do? Bicarbonate. If there is severe acidemia, you have to give bicarbonate in an amount sufficient to alkalinize the urine. So here the target is to alkalinize the urine, because alkalinization of urine, that increases the excretion of salicylates, to alkalinize the urine and to maintain urine output. Remember, if a patient is having concomitant respiratory alkalosis, then also you have to supplement with this soda bicarbonate, but you have to be a bit cautious, right? So that patient do not have severe alkalemia. In case if it occurs and you want to treat this condition, then you need to give acetazolamide, right? But otherwise, soda bicarbonate has to be given, and it has to be given in an amount which is sufficient to alkalinize the urine and to maintain urine output, because alkalinization of urine will increase the urinary excretion of salicylates. Even if there is respiratory alkalosis, then also you have to be given, but you have to be a bit cautious, right? Another important thing you have to take care is hypokalemia, because vigorous soda bicarbonate therapy can result in hypokalemia. So you have to recognize and treat. So this is about the salicylates. Another, if I discuss a bit about the ethylene glycol. So ethylene glycol, you all know it is used as an antifreeze, right? So in ethylene glycol, basically metabolic acidosis occurs due to accumulation of ethylene glycol and its metabolites like oxalic acid and glycolic acid, right? So when will you give a, when will you have a, clue, or when will you suspect the diagnosis of this ethylene glycol? When a patient is having high anion gap metabolic acidosis plus high osmolar gap. I have already told you about the osmolar gap. So usually this, look, the three important toxic or fatal intoxications are ethylene glycol, methanol and isopropyl glycol. So all of these conditions, all of these three conditions result in increase in osmolar gap. But remember, isopropyl alcohol does not elevate the anion gap usually. Remember? Okay. So high anion gap metabolic acidosis plus high osmolar gap. Apart from that, you can also have oxalate crystals in urine, because I told you that the metabolite is oxalic acid. So oxalate crystals in urine. So if you come across these things, right, particularly high osmolar gap metabolic osmolar gap and high anion gap metabolic acidosis, so think of ethylene glycol, right? Now what is the treatment of ethylene glycol? So first of all, you have to do the saline or osmotic diuresis. But apart from that, IV fomepizole, which is alcohol dehydrogenase inhibitor, or IV ethanol, they are the drug of choice. Particularly IV fomepizole is the drug of choice. IV fomepizole or IV ethanol, they compete with alcoholic dehydrogenase, right? Ethylene glycol is also getting metabolized by alcoholic dehydrogenase, and they are competing with alcoholic dehydrogenase for its metabolism, right? So therefore, there does not occur accumulation of the toxic metabolites like glycolic acid and oxalic acid. So IV fomepizole or IV ethanol. Hemodialysis is indicated if the pH is less than 7.3, or if the osmolar gap is more than 20. Right? If arterial pH is less than 7.3 or osmolar gap is more than 20, then hemodialysis is indicated. I hope it is clear till now what we have discussed. Okay. Apart from that, you can give also thiamine and pyridoxine supplements in this ethylene glycol poisoning, because there is associated lactic acidosis also, because this ethylene glycol and its metabolites, they inhibit the TCA cycle. So if you give thiamine and pyridoxine supplementation, so because they are cofactors, so they will overcome that inhibition. So you can give thiamine and pyridoxine supplements, but the important is IV fomepizole. If not available, you can give IV ethanol, and hemodialysis indicated if pH is less than 7.30, or I think this 7.30, or osmolar gap is more than 20 milliosmol per kg, right? So this is about it. Now a word about the methanol. Now this ethylene glycol, they cause CNS, cardiac, lungs and kidney toxicity. Methanol, the metabolite, you know, the toxic metabolite is formaldehyde and formic acid. Particularly formic acid, they cause severe CNS and optic nerve damage, right? The treatment is similar to ethylene glycol, and similarly you have high anion gap metabolic acidosis plus high osmolar gap. This oxalate crystals is particular to ethylene glycol, right? But in methanol toxicity also you will have high anion gap metabolic acidosis plus high osmolar gap, and the treatment is similar to it. And what about isopropyl alcohol? So isopropyl alcohol is usually used as a de-icer, right? If you have to remove the ice, right? So it is used as a de-icer. So this isopropyl alcohol, they causes increase in osmolar gap, but there is usually the anion gap is not elevated, right? So just we have a look about the isopropyl alcohol. So if I talk about the isopropyl alcohol, so it is metabolized by alcohol dehydrogenase to acetone. So it is different from the rest of the toxic alcohol ingestions in two ways. One thing is the parent compound only causes toxicity, the metabolite is not toxic. And another thing is that it does not elevate the anion gap usually, because acetone is rapidly excreted, so it usually does not elevate the anion gap. Okay. So I just write it down. So high anion gap metabolic acidosis is usually not seen, and only parent compound is toxic. There will be increase in osmolar gap. Usually it is a solvent or it is used as a de-icer, right? More than 400 milligram per deciliter of plasma level, that is life threatening. So if there is a patient who is having hemodynamic instability plus plasma level more than 400 milligram per deciliter, so he requires dialysis, hemodialysis. Apart from that, hypoglycemia is very common in it. So this is about the isopropyl alcohol. Another important is this propylene glycol. So a word about the propylene glycol. Usually it is used as a vehicle, right? Like in patients who are receiving lorazepam, diazepam, aptoin, phenobarbital, etomidate, right, nitroglycerin. So it is used as a vehicle in these compounds, right? So used as a vehicle. Okay, it is used as a vehicle in IV administration of lorazepam, diazepam, phenytoin, etomidate, nitroglycerin, phenobarbital. So say if there is a patient of alcohol withdrawal syndrome, usually its toxicity is seen in ICU settings because of frequent and continuous administration of these drugs, right? So say if there is a patient of alcohol withdrawal syndrome, you are treating that patient, you come across unexpected high anion gap metabolic acidosis, high osmolar gap, and there is clinical deterioration despite treatment for alcohol withdrawal syndrome. So you should suspect this propylene glycol toxicity, right? So there is increase in osmolar gap, there is high anion gap metabolic acidosis, and if there is clinical deterioration, particularly in setting of alcohol withdrawal, particularly if treating for alcohol withdrawal, because in alcohol withdrawal all of these drugs can be used for seizures, right? So you should you should suspect this propylene glycol toxicity, and the treatment is you have to stop the infusion, right? And you have to give fomepizole if there is severe acidemia. So stop infusion, the offending infusion, and give fomepizole. And last is pyroglutamic acid. So usually the toxicity with pyroglutamic acid is encountered if a patient is taking acetaminophen, paracetamol in overdose, acetaminophen overdose, or in malnourished or critically ill patients, even if he is taking in the usual doses. In malnourished or critically ill patients, taking typical doses. So there is accumulation of this pyroglutamic acid or 5-oxoproline, right? So they can again result in high anion gap metabolic acidosis, right? So this is all about the high anion gap metabolic acidosis. Just but remember, but in this pyroglutamic acid there is only a high anion gap metabolic acid, there is no increase in osmolar gap, right? So treatment is, you just have to stop the acetaminophen, and if bicarbonate, you have to give bicarbonate if there is severe acidemia. So usually in toxic alcohol ingestion we are giving fomepizole if there is acidemia or hemodialysis, but in all other cases we have to give the bicarbonate, right, and stop acetaminophen. So this is about the high anion gap metabolic acidosis. Now we'll talk about the normal anion gap metabolic acidosis.